Hello and welcome to the latest Books Crypto Club weekly catch-up over virtual coffee, where various members of the Crypto Club just get together using Zoom just to say hi, chat about what's going on in the crypto world, any news about blockchain stuff, cryptocurrencies, halvings, which there's a lot going on at the moment with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, any changes with mining and any other news and views that we have. So let's see what happens today. Hey, Anthony, good afternoon. How are you today?
Yeah, I personally think it's still accumulation phase
Mm.
for a lot of people. From the figures that I'm seeing, there is institutional interest and increasing demand. I think that some of the whales are buying into, some of these, selling into some of these buy walls and kind of waiting their time. Probably miners that have to, because of the drop in the price, they've got to cover their costs. And so I think there's been a lot of selling from miners,
Mm.
slight capitulation from miners. But I think generally, the sentiment looks good, the fundamentals look good. Bitcoin will drag up the rest of the altcoins. Ethereum might have a very good run if they can get Ethereum 2.0 sorted. The testnet is starting to look good already. They've already building blocks on the testnet with their proof of stake algorithm and starting to lock up some ether. So this is the first tentative steps we see for ETH 2.0.
Yep.
It's looking good, and I think they've got like heads and shoulders above any other cryptocurrency. So, my money and my thought for anybody listening into this is Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to lead the way. Now, there are going to be various other projects out there that might be good investments. We might get another alt run. We'll get plenty of scams. In fact, I think there's one called Prism at the moment. Just stay away from that as much as possible.
Mm.
And you're going to see a lot more of that. So that's my general take. I think still accumulating every so often and dollar cost averaging in, and hopefully it's our little nest egg for the future.
Mm. I don't know. Have you been watching what's going on in the DeFi space at the moment, particularly with the likes of MakerDAO or MakerDAI and the latest hack that's gone on? Was it
Yeah.
yesterday? So it seems to be.
Is it D-Force?
Yes, I think that was it.
It was D-Force that got absolutely hacked to pieces. So everything on their platform. We don't know if it's a white hat hacker or a black hat hacker yet. We don't know if the funds are totally stolen or whether somebody's keeping them and going, this is an exploit, guys. I'll give the funds back, but patch the hole, which I hope in this kind of crypto space, we have people like that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's been an interesting space. So we had the March the 13th dump that saw MakerDAO have some massive liquidity problems and liquidating a lot of people. At that time, there was like 1.2 billion wrapped up in MakerDAO, and it fell to about 400 million in MakerDAO after that. But they have been gradually improving, and I think they're scrabbling to become more decentralized because they can see stable coins being an issue in the future, especially with the regulations that are being punted about by the what was it, the European Bank.
BIS, Bank of International
That's it.
Settlements. Yep.
Bank of International Settlements. Thanks for reminding me. So yeah, we've had that edict out. That's going to cripple some stable coins. I would have thought the decentralized stable coins are probably, they're going to fare better. But it's all based on brand new smart contracts, and you're always going to have the issue that if a smart contract has a problem and it breaks, or a hacker, uses this DeFi space to do some nefarious activity, you're always going to have these problems before we get a resilient layer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't personally touched DeFi. I think it's a fun space to play in. I think some of the custodial solutions out there, like BlockFi and Celsius, are offering a fantastic opportunity to get more crypto on your crypto. So the DeFi space, I think, has a lot more maturing to do. And I think we will have a few more issues in that space before it's resilient enough to be the decentralized finance space that we all want to start hanging stuff on.
Well,
But
I
we,
think
in TPS, we're looking at it very closely.
I was going to say as well that this is where it's the interesting thing where you're talking about like where you've got stable coins and you've got smart contracts that are suspect in some way that they fail. This is where I think that what Nexus Mutual are doing, where they're providing an insurance solution, which is insuring against the risk of a bug being found or an exploit happening in some way, really encouraging, because they had their first claim on that a few weeks ago with the initial, the way someone was playing arbitrage opportunities with DAI and Bitcoin and something else, and they actually paid out on it, which I was kind of surprised by in a way, because it was actually an exploit of arbitrage opportunity. It wasn't an exploit in a bug or an error or anything, but good enough that they paid out, and that kind of shows that this kind of thing is insurable. And that means the thing I've always been amazed, having worked in insurance for 6 or 7 years, you come to realize insurance is actually a really important element of innovation. Because the problem with innovation, when you're traveling in no man's land and you've created like a new 3D printer or a new biological thing or whatever, is that it comes with an enormous risk of, if it goes wrong, you're either going to prison or you're going out of business. And this is where insurance can come in really, really useful. Well, it doesn't insure you against going to prison. That it kind of underwrites things. It makes people more willing to explore these things. So I think Hugh from Nexus Mutual, because he's ex-Munich Re, got absolutely the right idea, and I look forward to seeing some more things on this. So yeah, interesting.
I'm seeing a few more companies come together and build insurance products for this space. And I think that's going to be decentralized as well. You're going to get decentralized insurance as well for.
Well, you've got the announcement a couple of weeks ago with David. I've forgotten his surname now. I've actually done some work with him. He was working on the Royal Mint token a while ago, before that project got shelved, and he has now set up a project which is an insurance proposition around crypto. I think they're the people who are working with Atrium. So Atrium, Lloyd's of London Insurance Syndicate, and they're now underwriting, I think it's wallets and a few other things. So I'm seeing this whole space growing, which is great. Once you've got things like custodial services, insurance, proper due diligence, proper industrial strength KYC, AML, CTF, it gives that confidence, which, as you were saying before, then allows the traditional financial services people to begin to move into this space once they've got the confidence that it's either regulated or controlled or whatever. So yeah, it's looking good in that respect.
Yeah, I'm finding it interesting as well that the Chinese are going ahead with their kind of digital stablecoin, highly centralized, not private at all, but at least they're pushing forward with it, and it's picked up a lot of ears, I think, around the world with regards to digital dollars and the digital euro dollar and the digital fiat currency. So I can see a lot more happening in that space as well.
Oh, have you taken a look at the Bank of England's discussion paper around central bank digital currency? Yeah,
so we're looking at that. And, quite a response.
Right. So I was on the webinar a week or so back where they're reviewing the feedback and they're reviewing comments and everything. And again, that certainly shows that at least they're thinking about not necessarily a cryptocurrency, but a digital currency in some way which has been implemented and using some of the features that you'd get from DLT. So, whether that's a centralized ledger or a decentralized ledger. But yeah, it's I find it fascinating how it is that you've got something that was originally designed around a libertarian principle of openness, transparency, decentralized, blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly, of all people, the Chinese governments are looking at adopting elements of it who aren't exactly known for, those attributes, and various central banks around the world are looking at as well. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Have you heard of a guy called Simon Dixon?
The name's familiar, but I don't know why.
Yeah, Simon Dixon, one of the OGs in this space, but he set up a company, Banks to the Future, and he's bankrolled, Kraken and BitMEX and Coinbase, even, to an extent, and has had a hand in a lot of these crypto platforms growing. And he believes that it'll only be a matter of time before a small country that has a central bank decides to underpin a lot of their wealth in Bitcoin rather than, gold or any other kind of stable coin like US dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as that happens, you're going to have a domino effect of central banks trying to underpin their structure. There's not going to be enough gold in the world to go around. And, for central banks to actually access physical gold so that they can prove that they've got a one-to-one relationship with whatever they're selling, is going to be really difficult for central banks.
Yep.
So how can you do this in an easier way with a currency that is non-correlated to anything before? I can think of one. As soon you will start to see these central banks, underpinning their currency, I think, with Bitcoin. And if that starts, to the moon, baby, as they say. But
well, certainly the reports
pretty different landscape.
The reports I've been reading would suggest that the countries that are most likely to adopt a cryptocurrency in some way, or a central bank cryptocurrency, are the smaller states that have got less skin in the game of the bigger world anyway. So you're not going to likely get like Russia, China, or America buying in for a new world currency, because they're all trying to do that with their own currency anyway. But it's the likes of, Bermuda, BVI, the Caribbean islands, whatever, where they're like 80 or below in terms of use of their currency around the world. But they suddenly see this as a new way of leveraging some stuff. And, with some smaller island nations in particular, having certain niches. So like Bermuda's really good for insurance. BVI is very good for offshore banking, this kind of thing. It might well be they can link something in of adopting something innovative like a cryptocurrency with their existing expertise. And that's kind of what Gibraltar and Malta have been trying to do, where they've got their existing expertise around gaming, so that they've kind of plugged in with some of the gaming type stuff. Certainly those two have, and trying to work in a crypto aspect with that as well. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think it will all change. The landscape will all change. I mean, if you think about the amount of dollars being printed at the moment, everyone is scrabbling for dollars. But as soon as that starts to become, we start to get into hyperinflation areas, I wonder if the central banks can continue to just print and print and print to prop it all up for the next kind of 5-10 years. I mean, that will give crypto a fantastic time to really put the foundations and bedrock in. But I still think we've got a decent enough foundation that if we wanted to build a new financial system, we've got the tools to do it.
I think it's going to be interesting as well with the current impact that the virus is having around the world. And as you say, all of the banks are now printing money. That kind of works as long as everyone prints the money.
Yeah.
Because that way it's like a rising tide. Everyone's going up in the same way. It's if you get it that certain countries do adopt that approach and others don't, that's where you start going to get a lot of disconnect between exchange rates. And then you're going to start getting inflation, then hyperinflation, and then a financial collapse in some way. I do get the impression at the moment that most of the governments around the world at the moment, their focus is on survival of the population. Then it's on preventing rioting and civil disobedience. Then it will be about economic welfare and survival. And it's necessarily kind of in that order of, make sure your people are alive, make sure your people are not fighting against you, and then give them an economic incentive to carry on. So I think they're still struggling with point one of making sure everyone's okay, let alone figuring out what the new economy is going to look like. Because I'd seen initially the US government was underwriting its funding of how it was paying people and everything, whilst they had lockdowns going on. So it's similar to the UK where they were issuing gilts, and it's one of these classic things that effectively what that means is that we've got an economic collapse that the bankers are actually benefiting from,
Mm.
because they'll get their brokerage fees and everything from sale of the gilts to the market. But who's going to buy all the gilts? You know, if every country is selling government-backed securities in order to raise funds to print more money, there's a point at which the demand for that dries up and it disappears, and we're in uncharted territory. So I'm just not quite sure what's going to happen at that point, when that then means that the banks are printing money that is worth less and less than face value, and we get hyperinflation around the world.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's quite scary when you start to think about what the possibilities could be. You know, not only are we seeing more bankruptcies with companies, but you know, I wouldn't be surprised when these companies that do survive, and I think, you know, somebody said they think 25% of companies won't survive this. But if they do, they open up very slowly, which means that not all those people that have been furlonged or made redundant will come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got a huge unemployment. You have a huge amount of people that can't afford their mortgages and default on their mortgages, which is what the 2008, 2009 financial crisis was all about. Because as soon as you start to default on those mortgages and that money disappears, the banks don't have the liquidity to lend to each other. Now, that was a financial crisis, and that's just one area of problem if people can't get back to work and can't get back to earning. You know, that's just one part of the stack of cards that we see about to topple. It's quite scary, because you're going to have so many businesses that are wiped out. They're saying that pubs and gathering areas are going to be the last to open. Now, how long are they going to be able to survive for? Because I'm sure that the majority of them don't have cash flow for 6 months. And I'm sure that the government doesn't have enough money to tide them over for 6 months, all of them. So, yeah, once this lockdown finishes, it's going to be decimation out there. Now, it could reveal more creative ways in which we can collaborate with each other and work with each other and do things more for the community and not necessarily always think about profit. I hope that's the outcome. But yeah, it could be quite scary.
Well, I think you're right as well. It's going to be interesting once we come out of lockdown mode, about there are companies who are going to go bust, and that they're going to go bust in the next few months. Then you're going to go to the next tier of companies, who are the ones who actually have provision, are going to survive, but are not then going to have a customer base to serve,
Yeah.
because everyone they served has gone bust.
Yeah.
You know, and then you've got a toppling type effect. So it's like, you know, someone who used to provide goods and services to other companies, and all those companies, as you say, like pubs and cafes and that, if they've now gone bust and they're all closed, then, you know, there's no demand and supply for that. That's why I find it fascinating looking at just how innovative some of the small firms are being right now. So, you know, in Marlow, for example, there was a fairly recently opened small independent microbrewery type pub, which was selling like craft beers and everything. And I used to go in there, great couple of guys running it. And I thought, you know, this is going to wipe them out. And then suddenly noticed they've started offering a delivery service. So that they've kind of pivoted from being a physical place where you go and get your beer to a place where they distribute it. So, you know, and good luck to them. That's fantastic. And there are some companies who are going to be able to do that. But there are other companies that, even if they pivot the business model of how they operate, their customer base is going to disappear. So it's going to be fascinating. So I think it's going to be a multi-layered, multi-year impact of not just companies going bust straight away, but then you're going to get this kind of second wave. And then you've got the other problem that a number of the companies who've survived have survived because of the government aid that's kept them in business, which is basically loan based. So effectively, all the government's managed to do is to put some relatively healthy companies into debt. in order for them to survive. So
It's,
it's bizarre. We're going to be in a debt-based economy
yeah,
even more than we were previously.
I feel sorry for the small business who has been scrabbling to make a profit, and they're almost there, and then coronavirus comes along and wipes them out, and it's soul destroying.
Yeah,
And
well,
I really feel sorry for some businesses.
yeah.
It's going to be tough, but we're going to have to support those businesses, those of us that can.
Yep. And that's the thing. Those who survive and thrive are going to have to support everyone else. But I find it interesting. I run a COVID-19 for small businesses type WhatsApp group, which is all about a lot of contractors, consultants, one-man bands, self-employed people. Because I realised that fairly early on, if you look at all the aid that's being given, if you're a self-employed person, in theory, there is government aid through grants and loans and that kind of thing. But when you actually look at it, a lot of people who call themselves self-employed, like me, single employee of a limited company. And I do it that way because my cash flow is so incredibly variable. I've got no idea what business I'm going to have from one week to the next. So I can't pay myself a high salary. I have to pay myself a low salary. And if I get any work in, then potentially I can get a dividend. For people in that space, there is no government aid whatsoever.
Mm.
So there's a lot of single person directorships. I think there's something like 3.5 million of them at the moment who are getting no aid whatsoever. So I'm running a group looking at what are the options around keeping going, keeping a cash flow going, what grant aid there is, furloughing as you mentioned, are all different options. But even with that, you look at it. If I was to
You
furlough
can't
my
follow yourself, though, can
well,
you?
you can,
Can you?
providing you don't then go out and do anything to generate business. So
Ah,
it's basically like financial suicide, because
yeah.
what I've said is that we'll give you grant aid up to a certain amount if you furlough yourself, but if you furlough yourself, the only activities you can do for your company are legal ones, things like completing your accounts and submitting your accounts and that. So if you were to do something like you furlough yourself and then you go out sales propositioning or marketing, which is exactly what you need to be doing right now, then you don't qualify.
Mm.
So yeah, it's one of those things that's going to kill off. So we're hoping there's been a petition in Parliament, hoping to get some debate going about actually maybe directors of tiny companies, micro companies, should be introduced into the scheme in some way where they don't have to furlough themselves. We'll see where that goes.
Mm.
But definitely an interesting one. I'm surprised no one else is joining us. Thought Dean said he was going to come on today.
Yeah.
Uh,
Shame.
um,
These
to,
people could have learnt so much from us, Gary.
well, I do record this. I'll trim out the beginning of the session, but certainly the conversation that we were having earlier on is relevant for everybody,
Yeah,
particularly around the halving and everything. So what I tend to do is I'll edit this and we'll post it up on YouTube so people can watch it afterwards anyway.
sure.
Because you do find some interesting stuff comes out. It's like the Crypto AM group that I run during the week. With that, sometimes it's just like a one-to-one conversation like this. So I don't tend to publish those. But when you get a few people in and they're all contributing stuff, you get some really interesting snippets coming out. And I've had people
Mm.
get in touch saying, "Hey, I watched your video on this. It's really good, and I'll join you next week and everything." So, yeah, but that should be good. So, well, on that basis, then we're pretty much on to the half hour.
Yeah.
Time has flown by.
Always good to chat to you, Gary.
Absolutely.
And
Well, you've got the details of the daily call as well, so you're more
yeah,
than
yeah, I
welcome.
might jump on if
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to still have a full-time job. So it's a full work days for me, which
Mm.
gets a bit crazy considering that my weekends I try to put the laptop down, but um, yeah,
Yeah, I get the same. I was talking to someone, funnily enough, because I also run a Zoom catch-up group for people in Marlow, just to keep in touch and make sure people are okay, or to actually teach them about how to use Zoom. And one of the guys who hopped onto the call a couple of days ago, he is from a very large IT company as well. And he was saying a similar story. He said, we're mad busy. He said, we've got clients that we still need to deliver stuff for.
Yeah.
We've switched to a total remote delivery.
Yeah.
Of all the companies who should be able to do it, he certainly works for one that should be able to. He said, but still the productivity's dropped for now, but we've still got stuff we need to do. We need to stay in business.
And to bring it full circle, you know, crypto and blockchain is pretty much a resilient industry. When you have a pandemic like this, you know, we can work remotely and we can collaborate remotely. So it's all good.
Well, I'm doing a mini workshop in a couple of weeks out in Sri Lanka, or rather, I'm not going to be physically in Sri Lanka now. I'm now going to be doing it via the web, and it's going to be talking about exactly that kind of thing about blockchain and cryptocurrency in a COVID world. So
We've got to do
it
one
ties with
for a client in Sweden.
Okay, yeah. We should compare notes at some point. That'll be good.
Sure.
All right, and have a good Sunday evening. I think it's Sunday. Yeah, but it's kind of
Yeah. The days mold into each other, but have a good Sunday, and everyone kind of rewatching this. I hope you found it useful.
Yeah, and for everyone else, as I always say now, as I sign off, now wash your hands.
Exactly. Take
Bye
care,
now.
everyone.
Bye now.